Every morning at exactly 8:03, she let her dog take a dump in my yard, never once picking it up. I tried everything: signs, neighbors yelling, even polite requests. Nothing worked. Until I turned my grief, my patience, and a pair of sprinklers into the most satisfying revenge of my life. If you've ever dealt with entitled neighbors or dreamed of the perfect revenge, you're going to love this story. Smash that like button, subscribe for more stories of poetic justice, and tell me in the comments, what's the rudest thing a neighbor has ever done to you? Let's dive in. I live in a fairly large city, one of those places where you'll find every type of dog owner imaginable. Most people here are respectful. They carry their little rolls of green or blue poop bags, bend down without hesitation, and clean up after their pups. It's part of the silent social contract of being a decent neighbor. But every so often you get the others. The careless ones. The entitled ones. The ones who treat sidewalks, yards, and even car tires as if they were open toilets for their pets. After the pandemic, these people seemed to multiply. Everyone wanted a companion. And for many, that meant rushing to adopt or buy a dog without the faintest clue what actual dog ownership required. The result? A city full of pandemic puppies, and owners who thought responsibility ended with snapping a leash on. At first, it was just an annoyance. A stray pile here or there on the sidewalk. You shake your head, mutter something about lazy people, and keep walking. But for me, it became something bigger. Something personal. See, I have a security camera facing the strip of grass near the sidewalk in front of my yard. It wasn't originally for dog duty. I set it up for package thieves and general peace of mind. But it quickly became my unwanted morning reality show. Because every day, like clockwork, I'd check the footage and see the same woman. She wasn't just letting her dog relieve itself in the grassy strip. No, she was letting it dump right in the sidewalk section of my yard. Sometimes directly in front of my wife's car tires. And not once, not a single time, did she bend down to pick it up. At first, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she forgot a bag. Maybe she was having a bad morning. Maybe it was a one-off mistake. But then it happened again. And again. And again. Every single day. I tried the polite route. I put up signs, bright, polite notices asking people to please clean up after your dog. They were ignored. I posted on the neighborhood app, explaining the issue. Silence. My kind neighbor even tried confronting her directly. She shouted across the lawn one morning, "Hey, pick up your dog's mess." But the woman just waved it off, muttered something about being late for work, and kept walking. When pressed further, she didn't apologize. Didn't show a shred of embarrassment. Instead, she smirked and said words that burned into my memory. "What are you going to do about it?" That sentence replayed in my head for days. It wasn't just dog poop anymore. It was the audacity, the blatant disrespect. She knew she was wrong, but she didn't care. Because in her mind, what could I possibly do? The truth is, it hit me harder than it should have, because it wasn't just about her dog. It stirred up memories of my own. Not too long ago, I had a dog of my own. Calling him a dog almost feels wrong. He was a giant, a 250-pound doofus who had the heart of a saint. He loved everyone: kids, cats, other dogs, strangers on the street. He was my best friend, my daily companion, my oversized shadow. Losing him 2 years ago shattered me in ways I can't even fully explain. In his memory, I built a little doggy treat library near my yard. A place where passing pups could grab a snack and owners could grab a free poop bag if they needed one. It wasn't just about treats. It was about respect, about community. I wanted people to feel welcome, to know that my yard was a place of kindness. So seeing this woman, this careless, entitled woman, treat my yard like her personal latrine cut deeper than just surface-level annoyance. It felt like she was spitting on everything I'd tried to build after my dog passed. And the thing is, I knew there was no excuse for her. Bags were available. Signs were posted. Neighbors had spoken. I had even seen her before when I used to walk my old boy. She was always glued to her phone, earbuds in, her little fluff ball of a dog straining at the leash, barking and snapping at other dogs. She never looked up, never apologized, never acknowledged anyone else's space. Her dog wasn't just poorly trained. It was aggressive. And each time, she barely noticed, too wrapped up in whatever podcast or phone call had her attention. It was clear to me. This wasn't ignorance. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was entitlement, plain and simple. But entitlement only lasts as long as you let it. Because the more I thought about her smug words, "What are you going to do about it?" the more a plan began to form. A plan that would turn my grief into laughter. A plan that would take her arrogance and wash it away, literally. A plan that would make her regret underestimating me. She thought there was nothing I could do. But she was wrong. Dead wrong. Once I realized this woman wasn't going to change, no matter how many signs or polite reminders she was given, I did what any person who values their sanity would do. I started watching. Not in the casual, "Oh, let me glance at the security feed" way, but with purpose. With intent. Every morning, I'd check the camera. And every morning, without fail, she appeared. Same time. Same place. Same routine. It was almost uncanny, the way she stuck to her schedule. At precisely 8:02 a.m., her silhouette would enter the frame, phone in hand, earbuds snugly tucked in, her little dust mop of a dog straining at the leash. At 8:03, without fail, the dog would squat on my grass. By 8:04 she was gone. Never late. Never early. Always exact. At first, the predictability infuriated me. It was like she knew I wasn't home at that hour. Like she counted on me being away, powerless to stop her. She had turned my yard into her daily bathroom stop. As reliable as a clock striking noon. But over time, my frustration shifted into something else. Something sharper. If she was that predictable, that locked into her routine, then maybe I could use it. Because revenge, the real kind, isn't about losing your temper. It's about patience, precision, timing. As I replayed the footage, I thought about my old boy. About how, despite his massive size, he'd been gentle enough to play with toddlers and patient enough to wait until I could bag up his mountain-sized dumps. He'd been a dog with manners, and I had honored him by making sure others could walk past my yard without stepping into a landmine. And here was this woman, ignoring all of that effort, trampling on it like it meant nothing. I knew then what I had to do. The idea came to me one night while I was watering the new lawn. Since my old boy had passed, I'd replaced the grass with microclover and other hardy plants that could handle dog urine. I'd learned the hard way how destructive it could be when a 250-pound dog made your yard his bathroom. My new setup wasn't just resilient, it was intentional, part of the healing process. That's when my eyes landed on the sprinklers. At first, it was just a passing thought. A fantasy. The image of her smug face suddenly drenched in ice-cold water, while her little fluff ball turned into a dripping rag doll. The mental picture alone almost made me laugh out loud. But then I remembered something else, something important. I didn't just have sprinklers. I had smart sprinklers. A Rainpoint system, hooked up to my Wi-Fi, controllable from my phone. I could turn them on any time. From anywhere. And not just turn them on. I could direct them. Adjust angles. Control pressure. Set timers. All with the push of a button. Suddenly, what had been a silly daydream turned into something much more real. Much more possible. I went into full prep mode. I rerouted hoses, adjusted nozzles, and made sure every ounce of water pressure in the house was primed and ready. No dishwasher running. No laundry starting. All of it reserved for one single purpose. Maximum blast. It wasn't just about spraying her. It was about engineering the perfect trap. I set one sprinkler facing the sidewalk, angled just right to catch her and her dog the moment they crossed onto the grass. Another sprinkler pointed from the opposite direction, overlapping just enough to create a soaking zone with no escape route. If she stepped into my yard, she'd be caught in a crossfire. And thanks to her punctuality, I didn't even need to sit there and wait. I set the system to fire at exactly 8:03 a.m. 10 minutes of full power, 15 gallons of water per minute. Enough to turn a neatly groomed outfit into a drenched disaster. Enough to wash away the smugness from her face. The more I fine-tuned the setup, the more the anticipation grew. It wasn't just revenge anymore. It was art. A small masterpiece of justice designed with care. But underneath the humor, the plotting, the giddy excitement, there was something deeper. Something heavier. Grief. Because the truth was, none of this would have mattered so much if my old boy was still here. If he was still walking beside me, tail wagging, making strangers laugh with his goofy antics. Losing him had left a hole I hadn't been able to fill. And now, every time I saw her dog squatting in the yard, it wasn't just disrespect. It was salt in that wound. This wasn't only about cleaning up dog poop. It was about protecting the memory of a friend who had been better behaved than most people I knew. It was about defending the little space I had worked so hard to reclaim after loss. So yes, I wanted to see her humiliated. I wanted to see her arrogance shattered. But deep down, I also wanted something else. Closure. The night before my plan went into motion, I sat by the window, looking out at the yard. I imagined what it would feel like to finally have control again. To not just suffer silently but to act. To push back against someone who thought they could walk all over me. Literally. The sprinklers gleamed in the moonlight. My phone rested in my palm, the Rainpoint app open and ready. Tomorrow, at 8:03 a.m., everything would change. Morning came, and for once, I wasn't dreading checking my camera feed. I was excited. Nervous, yes, but excited in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. At work, I kept glancing at the clock, waiting for the minute hand to creep closer to 8. My phone was on the desk, the Rainpoint app open, camera feed streaming live. This was it. The moment all the signs, posts, and neighborly warnings had failed to deliver. At 8:01, my pulse quickened. My palms were sweating, my foot tapping anxiously against the floor. It felt like I was about to launch some covert military operation, not water my lawn. But the stakes felt high. This was about dignity, respect, and yes, a little bit of payback. Then at 8:02 sharp there she was. Just like always. Same brisk walk, same earbuds in, same expensive-looking business casual outfit. Her dog trotted beside her, fluffy, obnoxious, and completely unaware of what was about to happen. I leaned closer to the screen as she slowed down, guiding her dog onto my grass. Right to the same spot. Like clockwork. Like she owned the place. Her dog began to squat. And that was my cue. 8:03. Click. The sprinklers roared to life. First came the one by the house, blasting out a jet of ice-cold water with the force of a fire hose. It hit the dog square in the face, sending the little fluffball into a frenzy of shaking and yelping. Half a second later, the sidewalk sprinkler erupted, drenching her from the waist down. The overlap of the two streams created a curtain of water she couldn't escape. Her reaction was everything I had hoped for and more. On the camera, I watched her leap back, shrieking in shock. She spun around, trying to shield herself with her arms, but it was useless. The water hammered down relentlessly, plastering her sleek hair to her head, soaking through her blouse, and turning her business slacks into a clingy, muddy mess. The dog, now resembling a drowned mop, whined pitifully as it scrambled in circles, unsure where to run. And then, oh, the poetry of it all. The dog managed to finish its business mid-chaos. A fresh pile, right under her heel. She slipped. The scream that followed echoed through my office speakers. Even though the camera mic usually barely picked up a whisper. She toppled onto the grass, flailing, her once pristine outfit now caked with wet dirt and, yes, her dog's fresh deposit. I actually doubled over laughing at my desk. I couldn't help it. Months of frustration, grief, and helplessness burst out of me in uncontrollable laughter. My boss even poked his head out of his office, eyebrows raised, probably wondering why I looked like I'd just heard the funniest joke in the world. On screen, she scrambled to her feet, clutching her soaked, muddy dog, her face twisted in outrage. She stormed off, screaming into the void as the sprinklers continued their relentless spray behind her. For the first time since this battle began, I felt something shift inside me. Relief. Vindication. The satisfaction of finally, having the upper hand. But it didn't end there. Because about an hour later, I got a notification on my phone. Someone had posted on the neighborhood app. Curious, I clicked. And there it was. Her. A furious post about how irresponsible and cruel. It was for people to set their sprinklers on during morning walk times. She complained about how her dog had been traumatized and how her clothes were ruined. The comments section? Pure gold. One neighbor replied, "Maybe just walk a different route?" Another chimed in, "Or maybe, I don't know, clean up after your dog." The more she argued, the deeper she dug her hole. She admitted her dog had gotten dirty, that she'd slipped, that she was late to work because of the mess. And everyone knew exactly who she was talking about. Her reputation, once just annoying to me personally, was now unraveling publicly. But the best part? She still didn't know it was me. And that meant I wasn't done. Not even close. Because this was just the first round. The moment finally came when I could no longer hold my silence. For weeks, I had let her play her game, pretending not to notice how she whispered to my husband, how she tried to paint me as the weak one in front of others, and how she strutted around my home as if she owned it. One evening, while we were all at the dinner table, she laughed a little too loudly at something my husband said. She reached across, brushing her hand against his, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I saw it. He saw it. And I knew. It was deliberate. My blood boiled, but I kept my expression calm. Instead of exploding, I simply leaned back in my chair and said, in the most casual tone I could muster, "Funny how guests forget their guests." The room went silent. My husband looked at me with wide eyes, unsure of what I meant. My sister, however, froze. She knew. Her smile faltered for the first time since she had walked through my door. She tried to cover it up, laughing nervously. "Oh, come on, don't be so dramatic. You're just imagining things." But I didn't let it slide this time. I looked her straight in the eyes, my voice calm but sharp enough to cut glass. "No. I've imagined enough. I've watched you take over my home, disrespect me in front of my husband, and act like you own everything here. But let me remind you, this isn't your house. This isn't your life. And it never will be." Her face drained of color. My husband shifted uncomfortably, looking between us. He opened his mouth to say something, but I held up my hand, silencing him. "This is between me and her," I said firmly. For the first time, my sister had no words. She sat there, staring at me, realizing I wasn't the naive, forgiving woman she thought I was. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to throw a scene. My calmness was enough, it was power. Because in that moment she finally understood. Her time in my home was coming to an end. From that day onward, I became an actress in my own home. I wore a mask so perfect that no one suspected a thing. To my sister, I was the broken woman who still needed her. I pretended to be weak, scared, and dependent. While secretly, I was pulling the strings behind the curtain. Every fake smile I gave her was poison wrapped in sugar. Every nod of obedience made her believe she had full control. But in reality, she was only sinking deeper into the trap I was setting. The sweet irony was that the more she celebrated her victory, the more blind she became to her coming downfall. My silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy. And when the mask finally fell, she would regret ever underestimating me. The more she thought she had won, the bolder she became. My sister didn't just take my house. She began to flaunt it. She threw parties in the very living room where I used to sit with my family. She paraded around in expensive clothes bought with my savings. And worst of all, she invited people who used to be my friends, just to show them that she had replaced me. Every move she made screamed arrogance. And arrogance, I knew, would be her downfall. She bragged about her control, but she didn't realize she was leaving trails. Financial mistakes, careless words, and enemies she didn't even know she was making. Her greed was no longer just a weakness. It was a weapon, and I was going to use it against her. It started small. One of her friends from those parties she hosted called me privately. They told me how she bragged about money she didn't even earn, how she looked down on them, humiliated them, acted like a queen in my house. That was when I realized she wasn't just making enemies. She was building an army for me, without even knowing it. I stayed quiet, collected every piece of information, every lie she told, every debt she ignored, every promise she broke. And then it happened. A payment she was supposed to make slipped through the cracks. Her greed blinded her, and the first real crack appeared in her perfect little kingdom. She laughed it off, thinking nothing could touch her. But I saw it. And deep down she must have felt it too. The ground beneath her wasn't as solid as she believed. The dominoes were trembling. And I was ready to give the first push that I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I didn't even warn her. Instead, I did what she least expected. I smiled. Whenever she insulted me, I just looked at her calmly. When she paraded around the house like a queen, I simply nodded and walked away. And the more silent I became, the more restless she grew. She thrived on attention, on my anger, on my pain. But when I stopped reacting, her control started slipping. She began overcompensating, throwing bigger parties, spending more money, talking louder, laughing harder. But everyone could see it. Her laughter wasn't real anymore. It was cracked, forced. My silence, was slowly becoming her worst nightmare. Because deep down she knew, I wasn't broken. I was waiting. And waiting is always scarier than striking. It started small. She'd lose her temper over the tiniest things. A glass out of place. A neighbor not greeting her first. Her husband coming home 5 minutes late. She snapped at everyone. But mostly at me. Because even though I said nothing, she could feel it. That quiet strength. That unnerving patience. Every time I looked at her calmly, she flinched. As if my silence carried secrets she couldn't see. She began whispering on the phone late at night. Locking doors that were once open. Checking over her shoulder when she thought no one was watching. And for the first time, her confidence cracked. Her perfect little empire, the one she stole from me, wasn't so stable anymore. She had built it on lies. And lies have a way of collapsing. Especially when no one is shouting. But everyone is watching. The house no longer felt like hers. She walked through the room she once claimed as her kingdom. But every shadow made her uneasy. Every creak in the floorboards made her jump. Every silence felt heavy. As if the walls themselves were whispering truths she couldn't silence. Her husband started questioning her. Her friends noticed her slipping mask. The neighbors, once charmed by her arrogance, now whispered about her strange behavior. And all I had to do was nothing. My calmness tormented her. Because in her mind, silence wasn't empty. It was dangerous. She tried baiting me into fights. Accusing me of things I hadn't done. Searching for proof of a war I wasn't fighting. But I only smiled softly, answered with kindness, and stepped aside. And that was worse than any scream, any confrontation, any battle she had prepared for. Because now she realized, she wasn't fighting me anymore. She was fighting herself. Paranoia ate her alive. She started locking every door twice, checking the windows in the middle of the night, and accusing everyone around her of betrayal. But paranoia has a price, and hers came sooner than she expected. One morning, her husband stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I heard their voices echo through the thin walls the night before. She had accused him of cheating, of plotting against her, of siding with me. He was furious, and I could almost laugh, because in her desperation to control everyone, she was driving them away instead. Later that week, she made an even bigger mistake. She went to a friend's gathering, pretending to be the same confident woman she once was. But a few glasses of wine loosened her tongue, and in her drunken haze, she confessed. Not everything, but enough to spark suspicion, enough to make people wonder if her perfect image was nothing but a mask. By the time she realized what she'd done, it was too late. The whispers had already started. Her reputation, the very thing she had destroyed me to protect, was cracking at the edges. And I simply watched, smiling, waiting, because the best part of revenge isn't when you strike, it's when they destroy themselves. With their own hands. It started small, just a few raised eyebrows, a couple of sideways glances, and hushed voices when she entered the room. But whispers are like fire. They spread fast. Her neighbors began avoiding her. Friends suddenly too busy to meet. And invitations to social events stopped arriving. The queen of appearances was becoming an outcast. She tried to silence the rumors, to laugh them off. But the more she denied, the guiltier she looked. And the whispers kept circling back to me. She treated her so badly. Do you remember what she did to her sister? I heard her own husband can't stand her anymore. It was delicious. For years she painted me as the weak one, the failure, the disgrace. Now she was the one drowning in shame. and I didn't have to lift a finger. I would catch her sometimes, standing at the window with wild eyes, searching the street as if people were watching, as if I had sent spies to follow her. But no, it wasn't me. It was her own guilty conscience that hunted her in every shadow. And still, this was only the beginning. Her world hadn't fallen apart yet. Not completely. But I was ready. So very ready. Because whispers only serve one purpose: to prepare for the scream that comes next. The whispers had done their job. Her mask, the perfect one she wore for years, was cracking. It was her husband who tore it off completely. I will never forget that night. He stormed out of their house, slamming the door so hard the whole street shook. Neighbors peeked through curtains, curiosity buzzing like electricity. Minutes later, her voice broke through the silence. Screams shrill and panicked. Words like liar, betrayal, disgust cut through the air. The truth was spilling out. And this time, there was no way to hide it. Her husband had discovered everything. The lies, the manipulations, the way she used everyone for her own image. And worst of all, the things she did to me. The cruel stories, the humiliation, the betrayals she thought were buried. He told her he was done, that he wanted nothing more to do with her. Her perfect marriage, the one she always held over me like a trophy, was finished. She stood in the street that night, her makeup streaked down her cheeks, begging him not to leave. But he didn't even glance back. And as I watched from my window, hidden in the dark, a calmness washed over me. For years I had dreamed of this moment, but reality was sweeter than fantasy, because her destruction wasn't loud and explosive. It was slow, humiliating, and public. The same way she made my suffering. And I wasn't done. Not yet. The downfall had begun. But instead of accepting it, she scrambled, like a drowning woman clutching at anything to stay afloat. She called me the very next day. Her voice was trembling, but her words were sharp as always. You did this, didn't you? You turned him against me. I didn't bother answering. Silence was more powerful than any denial. That silence drove her mad. She began spinning stories, telling neighbors that I was jealous, that I was spreading lies to ruin her marriage. She even cried in front of them, her crocodile tears soaking into tissues she carried everywhere, as if the world owed her sympathy. But the problem was, truth always leaves stains, and hers were finally showing. Her husband started telling people why he left. Not just friends, not just family, but everyone who would listen. The rumors of her cruelty, her double life, and her obsession with destroying me spread like wildfire. The more she tried to defend herself, the more pathetic she looked. Every word she spoke, every fake tear she shed, only made people whisper louder. Maybe she really was the monster. And I stayed quiet. No accusations, no screaming, no desperate explanations. Just silence. And the beauty of silence is that it makes the guilty scream the loudest. She thought she was still playing the game, but what she didn't realize was the board had flipped, and every move she made now only cornered her further. It didn't happen overnight. Her fall was slow, agonizing, and beautifully poetic. Her husband filed for divorce. The settlement was brutal. He took the house, the car, and most of the money. All she was left with was her pride. And even that was crumbling. Her so-called friends started to vanish. One by one, the people who once fed off her drama distanced themselves. Nobody wants to be around a sinking ship, especially when it's loud, desperate, and clawing for attention. Then came the job. Her boss had heard the whispers, the scandal, the public humiliation, and soon she was asked to resign quietly. The woman who once mocked me for being powerless was now sitting alone in her tiny apartment, unemployed, unwanted, unloved. I heard she tried calling me again. This time her voice wasn't sharp. It was broken. Please, I don't know what to do anymore. I've lost everything. But I didn't answer. Not a single word. Because that's the thing about revenge. The sweetest kind isn't loud or bloody. It's silent. It's letting them destroy themselves with the very fire they lit for you. And as I sat back, watching the empire she built out of lies turn into dust, I realized something. I never had to fight her. All I had to do was wait. And in the end, that was enough. And that's how my revenge was complete. Without a scream, without a fight. Just silence that broke her more than words ever could. Would you have stayed silent like me? Or would you have gone all out for revenge? Share your thoughts. I'm dying to know.